Hello. I'm gonna sit down, do my makeup, and I'm gonna talk about Cleveland, Ohio's most notorious, most gruesome serial killer. And he was called the Torso Killer. Before we start, I just want to remind you to subscribe to the channel. It is free, it helps your girl out, and yeah, that's pretty much it. I just want to say thank you for all the love and support that I've been receiving since I started the channel 2 weeks ago. I've been wanting to do this for a very, very long time, and I finally have the time to sit down and do it, and I'm glad that it has received so much love and support. So I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. With that, let's get started, get this show on a roll, and talk about the serial killer. So we're going to start on the east side of Cleveland. Where this mostly took place was Cleveland, Ohio, and there was a lot of water running through this area. It was kind of like where all the water ran off, like a reserve kind of. There was a river nearby, lots of streams, and there was also a sewer tunnel under the avenue that ran nearby. The area was a large focus for traffic, and the railroad was right there where people can come in and out from out of town. And because so many people from out of the area were coming through so very often, that drug in the gambling, the drugs, the alcohol, the prostitution, and the police referred to this area as the Roaring Third. It was said that in the 1900s, there were a lot of gambling houses, illegal saloons, so people can drink, a lot of brothels, and they were pretty much all over the place, and police would raid them all the time, just to make them seem unattractive to newcomers, like people coming in from out of town on the train and everything. And so it would make them seem like that place gets raided a lot, I'm not going there. A lot of people that resided in this area, I have a huge breakout going on right now, so we're gonna attempt to conceal that up. A lot of people that resided in the area were very, very poor. Now, a lot of people during this time were very poor because we're in the Great Depression at this time. They really didn't have anything to their name, especially the people that lived here. Most of them were actually homeless and just lived in tarps or huts that they made. Between the years of 1934 and 1938, the bodies of 7 men and 5 women would be found. And in 1934, a young man was walking along the water there and spotted the remains of a lower torso. The torso was cut off at the knees, so it was pretty much no head, just the shoulders all the way down to the knees, and that was it. And when police came and looked at it, it was the body of a woman. Now, she had no head, like I said, but they were never able to identify her, so she gained the nickname the Lady of the Lake. The reports say that this lady's skin was very red and was like leathery and just very dried out. Like I said, they were unable to identify her, so they just referred to her as the Lady of the Lake. Almost a year later, 2 boys would come across a body of a decapitated man, only wearing a pair of socks, and this was 28-year-old Edward Andrassy. His body was already decomposed a lot when he was found, so they think that Edward was actually dead for about like 3 to 4 weeks before they even found him. Throughout the next few years, the bodies of all these missing people that would just show up were all missing their freaking heads and various other limbs. Some were missing their arms, some were missing their legs, some were missing all of them. Their death was determined to be decapitation and dismemberment. Duh. Some of the bodies were found alone, and some of the bodies were found on the same days, near each other, near other limbs of other people. And some of them were just scattered throughout town. So it's clear at this point that this guy or female, whoever is doing it at this time, has created some sort of signature. This guy was decapitating them, cutting off various parts of their limbs, and when it came to male victims, he'd be cutting off that too. He would sometimes even burn the bodies, and he would try to accelerate the decomposition of the body by covering them in an acid, which we talked about with the lady of the lake, had to have been covered in something when she was found, and they found out it was probably acid, and that would make their skin very leathery and just dried out, and it would hurt the police's investigation because they weren't able to identify a lot of these victims. He would take his victims from the spot that he killed them, take them down to Kingsbury Run, and sometimes burn them on the spot there. When some of these bodies were found, they were found Dexter style. If you know, you know. And there would be no additional blood underneath the victim. There would be no blood in them at all. And this would suggest to police that he brought them there, already dead, and that he was killing them somewhere else. But like I was saying, most of the victims didn't have their heads attached to them when they were found, and some of their heads were never found. So like, was this your sort of trophy to getting away with this or something? Like, we see some serial killers, they keep like jewelry or fingers or weird things like clothing, but this guy wanted to just chop their head off and keep it. Like, what were you keeping that in? Why? I would assume that profiling this person would kind of be easy because he clearly had to have some sort of property secluded enough to where he can lure these people in, because there was really no evidence of them being drugged that I'm aware of to get them to this place where he was. I mean, unless he was just walking around abducting people, and that's possible. He also had to work in a field with a lot of knowledge about the anatomy of a human. If you're just chopping up bodies, like, it's gonna show that you're an amateur. And this guy knew what he was doing when he did this. He had to have been some type of nurse or doctor or medical student, like something along those lines, because his cuts were so unhesitant. He didn't think twice about where he was cutting when he was dismembering these bodies. The hacks on these bodies were so crisp and clean and sharp. Oh no, got in my eyebrow. They just assumed that, like, this guy knew the body, like I've been saying. But they also assumed that the killer must have been really strong, because the bodies were carried to the locations where they were found And some of these bodies weren't found until weeks post-mortem. So I think it's possible that when one person, I think it's possible that when the person came to the district, he could have tossed an arm or two out in the water, and you know, the next time he came, brought a leg with him. That's just a thought that I might have had. But I guess they just assumed that he was doing it all at once. And when they stumbled upon the 9th victim, this person had been completely gutted. They had no heart, no guts. Whoever was doing this was taking their hobby very seriously. Police were saying that this guy was just killing for the pure joy of it. And it seemed like he was getting an edge over the police. Some body parts were found in Western Pennsylvania too, which could suggest that he was traveling and got on the train a lot and went back and forth. And possibly even hiding body parts like in the train itself and throwing them out while the train was driving. So who was going around chopping these damn people up? Police did suspect a few people, but one specifically really stuck out to me, and that's what I'm going to talk about. If you're interested in finding out who the other people were, I will leave my sources down below, and you guys are more than welcome to read about it. The reason why I suspect him a lot is because he just fits my idea of the profile. Now, the lead investigator on this case was the hotshot at this time. He never did anything wrong. He was a hotshot. He always closed his cases out, and his name was Elliot Ness. And he was always able to close out his cases, even huge ones that we've all heard of, except this one. This one really got him. This one went to the grave with him. But he did have one person in mind, like me, who he thought was the serial killer. This man's name was Dr. Frank Sweeney, and he was a native to Cleveland, Ohio, where these murders were taking place. And, you know, he was a doctor in the area. Ness would interrogate him. He gave him a polygraph, which I guess he miserably failed, but he didn't have any evidence against this guy that would stand up in court. So he pretty much had nothing besides the polygraph. Sweeney would taunt him with postcards, sending them in the mail. This guy pretty much tortured him, like would send him postcards and like a catch me if you can type of style and attitude, and it just made this guy miserable. He pretty much drank himself and medicated himself to death after years of being unable to solve it, and it just tortured him. This guy went as far as to put one of his victims' bodies right outside of his office, where if he looked out the window, he was able to see the dead body. The police would do a final raid on the Roaring Third, and this would literally burn it to the ground. They had enough, and they wanted to get rid of it. So they legit went and torched it to the floor, or to the ground, and this ultimately ended all shenanigans in the area. If you guys are wondering what this is, I am using the e.l.f. No Smudge Shadow Stick in Rose Gold. All the products that I use, I will put down below so you guys can look at them, and if you guys are interested in any of them. They did receive one final letter in 1938. And this letter pretty much said, "You can rest easy now. I have come out to sunny California for the winter. I won't be returning." Oddly enough, although it was 10 years after this all, a woman by the name of Elizabeth Short, also known as the Black Dahlia, if anybody has heard of her. She was murdered in Los Angeles, and she was cut in half, didn't have any intestines, and she was drained of all of her blood. Does that sound familiar? All right, guys, there we have it. The torso killer from Cleveland, Ohio. And I strongly feel like it was Dr. Sweeney. Do you guys feel the same, or do you guys think that the other suspect may be involved? Read about it. I'll leave the sources down below and let me know what you guys think. And I just want to say thank you for all the unconditional support that I have been receiving on my channel. And don't forget to subscribe. It really shows your support for me. It helps me out in the long run, and it's free. So we'll leave it at that. And I thank you guys as always for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.